I met Alina on the rooftop of a downtown cafe in late spring, one of those golden May evenings where the light makes everything look gentler. She was sipping iced coffee, tucked into a corner, reading Murakami with her knees up on the bench. I didn't know people still read physical books in public like that. She noticed me looking, tilted her head, and asked if I needed the seat across from her. I didn't, but I took it anyway. We talked about music, mostly. She said I looked like someone who listened to vinyls and thought Bon Iver was profound. I told her she was only half right. She laughed, and the sound stuck with me for the rest of the week. That's how it started. Just a random Tuesday evening, a half-stolen seat, and a laugh that wouldn't leave me alone. Alina was electric in a quiet way. The type of person who remembered the name of your second-grade teacher if you mentioned it once, who made the effort to write postcards on holidays even if she never mailed them. She believed in keeping your shoes clean and your promises cleaner. It wasn't long before I knew I wanted to marry her. We didn't have a fairy tale wedding. We eloped to a courthouse in Nevada while on a road trip. She wore white sneakers and a sundress. I wore a tie I found at a gas station souvenir rack. We took Polaroids outside the building and danced under a parking lot street lamp to a song from her phone. Our parents forgave us eventually, once they saw how happy we were. We built our life slowly. She had a knack for design and ended up running a boutique interior firm by her mid-30s. I was in tech, mostly back-end development, the kind of job people nod politely about and never ask too many questions. Our careers grew steadily, never meteoric, but comfortable. We bought a townhouse on the edge of the city, a corner unit with large windows and a garden she loved but never remembered to water. By our early 40s, life had arranged itself neatly around us. We traveled twice a year, always somewhere coastal. Alina hated the cold. We spent Sundays hosting brunch for friends or just lazing in mismatched pajamas watching documentaries. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a novel. But it was ours, and it felt like enough. She started making more of her own money around that time. Her projects were featured in a couple of magazines. She never bragged, but I saw the way her face lit up when clients recommended her by name. I was proud of her. Genuinely. Watching someone you love find their footing in the world is an underrated joy. People always asked if we wanted kids, and we always said, maybe someday, until someday just never came. We had a routine that worked. A rhythm. She kept the upstairs bathroom stocked with eucalyptus candles. I made the coffee every morning before she even opened her eyes. We'd grown into each other, like ivy on an old fence. And I thought, I really did, that this was the good part. The part people waited for. The stable love. The quiet happiness. The warm familiarity of knowing someone so well you can hear them smile from another room. If you asked me what a typical week looked like for us, I could have drawn it from memory. Mondays started with early meetings and an unspoken agreement to stay out of each other's way until after lunch. Alina worked from her studio office upstairs, I stayed buried in client calls and code reviews in the den. By evening, she'd call down asking what we felt like for dinner, but she'd usually have already started something, pasta with garlic and lemon, or one of her endless variations of roasted vegetables. I did the dishes, always. Fridays were our wind-down nights. No plans, no calls, no visitors. We'd sit in the living room with a bottle of wine, sometimes just talking, sometimes watching reruns of shows we could quote word for word. It wasn't flashy, but it was dependable. That was one of the things I loved about her. She had a kind of presence that made ordinary things feel complete. Weekends were for long walks and antique markets. We didn't need more furniture, but Alina liked to browse. She'd run her fingers across wooden surfaces and guess what kind of stain had been used. I never cared much about credenzas or mid-century lines, but I liked how excited she got when she found something that matched her vision. It gave her a spark, and I liked watching her chase it. We had a way of fitting into each other's lives without the need to ask for space. She knew I needed my Saturday mornings quiet, with a book and my coffee, and I knew she liked her Sunday baths with a playlist and an old-fashioned magazine. We moved like dancers who'd rehearsed together for years, never stepping on toes, always anticipating the next beat. Our friends used to joke about how synced we were. Married telepathy, someone called it once at a dinner party. Alina laughed and said it was more like mutual tolerance. But I think she liked the idea that we were seen as one of those stable couples people could count on. She liked being admired, even subtly. We traveled light. When we took vacations, we packed a single suitcase between us. She rolled her clothes meticulously, I tossed mine on top and hoped she wouldn't notice. She always did. But she never said anything, just repacked everything while I was brushing my teeth. That was love, I thought. Not grand gestures or cinematic declarations. Just small things. Everyday things. We'd been married over a decade by then. The years had etched into us comfortably. Our photos showed laugh lines and sunburns, lazy smiles and squinted eyes. Nothing dramatic. Nothing wild. Just steady warmth, the kind you don't notice until the chill sneaks in. Sometimes I'd look over at her while she was writing in her notebook or fixing the hem on a curtain she decided needed adjusting. I'd think, this is it. This is what contentment looks like, not a peak or a crescendo, but a steady note, played well, played true. It never occurred to me to want more. I thought we were past all that. Past the doubts, the searching, the proving. We were in the settled part of life, the long stretch after the building is done. And in that long stretch, we found a kind of peace. Looking back, I don't think there was a single moment when our life began to feel permanent. It just sort of happened. One day we were newlyweds, laughing over burnt pancakes and assembling flat-pack furniture wrong, and then suddenly we were 10 years in, surrounded by things we'd collected together, rugs from Portugal, photo strips from street booths, framed postcards we never mailed. The house was a reflection of us. Alina believed in open spaces and natural light, soft linens, and furniture that didn't look too perfect. Home should breathe, she used to say, and our home did. It smelled like lemon oil and basil, sounded like acoustic playlists and quiet footsteps on hardwood floors. We had inside jokes scribbled on sticky notes on the fridge, a list of movies we never finished on the side of the TV, and a basket by the entryway that she claimed was decorative but always ended up full of keys, receipts, and sunglasses. Life with Alina was like living in a carefully curated art installation, except messier, and more human. Work was steady. I had climbed high enough in my firm to have some flexibility, and Alina's business was booming. Her portfolio expanded quickly, and with it came recognition. She started getting invited to speak at conferences, her designs featured in online publications. I always supported her, genuinely. I never felt insecure about her success, if anything, I admired it. She had ambition, and she followed through, no matter how late it kept her up. I knew what it took. There were nights she worked from the studio until nearly midnight, drafting layouts, replying to clients, tinkering with samples. Sometimes she came down buzzing, sitting beside me and showing me photos on her phone, mock-ups and paint swatches and before and after shots. I listened, nodding, and tried to follow along. Design wasn't my world, but she brought me into it in ways that felt intimate. We had plans. Not grand, sweeping ones, but real ones. We talked about converting the attic into a creative loft, maybe starting a small retreat space upstate someday. I'd write code freelance, and she'd lead design workshops. It was the sort of daydream you pull out on Sunday evenings, half serious but comforting in its possibility. We also had a rule: every 3 months, we took a weekend away, just us. It didn't have to be far or expensive. Sometimes it was just a cabin or a beach rental. But it was sacred. No laptops, no phones except for pictures. Those weekends were when I felt closest to her. We'd hike or cook together, lie in bed late talking nonsense. It felt like the early days, untouched by the world. Family wasn't a pressure point. Neither of us came from particularly close-knit clans. Holidays were often just the two of us, or sometimes with a few close friends. Alina said once that our life was quiet on purpose, and I liked that. It made us feel like we were in control of our space, our time, our choices. We weren't flashy. We weren't the couple everyone envied at parties. But we were solid. And isn't that what everyone ultimately wants? A love that doesn't falter when no one's watching. A life that doesn't have to be proven, just lived. We weren't the type to talk about everything all the time, but we didn't need to. At least, I didn't think we did. Our communication worked in gestures more than declarations. A fresh cup of coffee beside my keyboard before a meeting. A bottle of her favorite wine chilling when she came back from a stressful client call. A touch on the shoulder when passing in the hallway. It was the quiet kind of intimacy you don't realize is rare until you start describing it to someone else. Alina had her rituals. She always lit a candle before bed. She kept a gratitude journal, which she never showed me but sometimes left on the nightstand. She insisted on fresh flowers in the kitchen every week, even if it meant running out to the store just for tulips or wild lilies. I loved those little things. I thought they made her more her. When she started working more evenings, I didn't question it. Her business was growing fast, and with growth came pressure. Clients were more demanding, projects more complex. She began partnering with another firm, one that had more resources. She mentioned the collaboration in passing, said it was mostly logistical, that it would help scale her ideas. I never felt the need to pry. That was our thing. We trusted each other. She knew my passwords. I knew hers. Our phones lay around unlocked. Our finances were transparent. We had joint accounts, talked openly about spending, investments, savings. There were no secrets, at least not from where I stood. Some nights I'd come upstairs to find her still sketching layouts or mood boards, her screen glowing in the dark. She looked so focused, sometimes even joyful. I'd kiss her cheek, ask if she wanted tea, then leave her to it. We didn't need to be in each other's pockets all the time. That's the kind of love we had, roomy, comfortable, mature. Looking back, I can see how proud I was of that. Proud of how low maintenance we were, how little drama we ever seemed to have. Our arguments, when they happened, were short and quiet. About paint colors or travel dates. Nothing that ever left a scar. And so I gave her space, gladly. I believed giving space was a form of love. She started going to more networking events, staying out later than usual. At first, she always came home with stories, about the venues, the people, the conversations. She'd kick off her heels and talk with her hands, mimicking accents or reenacting awkward small talk. I'd listen from the couch, smiling at how animated she got. She always had this way of drawing a crowd, even in her stories. It was one of the first things that drew me to her. She also began hitting the gym more often, sometimes early in the morning, other times after work. "Keeps me sane," she'd say, and I believed her. I encouraged it, even. We both cared about staying healthy, and she said the exercise helped with her focus. Our life continued like that, busy, sometimes a bit chaotic, but grounded. We were building something, together. A future, a home, a shared story that spanned the better part of our adult lives. And I was content. Not complacent. Not oblivious. Just, sure. Sure of her. Sure of us. It was around late October when I started to notice it, not a dramatic shift, just small ripples in the rhythm we had cultivated for years. It began with the way Alina started pausing before answering simple questions, as though she was measuring her words. She still smiled, still touched my shoulder when passing by, but something about it felt practiced. Like muscle memory rather than presence. She started coming home later than usual from her design studio. "Clients keep pushing deadlines," she said. Sometimes I just need the quiet space after hours to get things right. I didn't doubt her. Not then. I knew how seriously she took her work, and if she needed to stay late to get it done, then so be it. She never gave me a reason not to trust her. But little details began piling up. One night, I found a pair of earrings on the entryway table that I'd never seen before. When I asked, she said they were a gift from a client. You know how some people like to butter up their designers, she said, waving it off with a laugh. Another time, she came home flustered, said she'd forgotten an important folder at the office. When I offered to drive her back to get it, she quickly declined. It's locked up anyway. I'll just deal with it in the morning. None of these things were particularly damning. Just, different. She started wearing perfume again, not just for nights out, but during the day. Subtle but expensive, floral and spicy, one I didn't recognize. Her workouts became more regular. She even bought new athletic gear, sleek and fitted, the kind she used to mock for being overpriced. Still, I didn't think much of it. If anything, I chalked it up to her hitting a new stride. A second wind in her career, maybe even personally. She was approaching 40, and people go through phases. I was happy to see her energized, even if it meant we were spending less time together. But the gaps between us started widening in ways I couldn't quite define. Our conversations grew shorter. Her answers were clipped, distracted. She spent more time on her phone, sometimes setting it face down on the table, which she never used to do. She began using phrases like, "I just need some air," or, "I feel like I'm stuck in the same routine," though she'd always been the one who loved that routine. We still had dinner together most nights, but the silences between bites were longer. She started forgetting little things, whether we had milk, if we'd RSVP'd to a wedding, what day I had a meeting I'd mentioned 3 times. Again, nothing huge. Nothing to ring alarms. But I knew her. I knew her patterns. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, she sat on the edge of the mattress, staring down at her hands. When I asked if she was okay, she looked at me like she wasn't sure who I was in that moment. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe I'm just tired." I offered to make her tea. She said no. It was still Alina, still my wife. But something had shifted. The warmth was there, but it flickered now, unpredictable and faint. And though I noticed it, I didn't let myself dwell. People go through phases, I told myself again. Maybe she just needed space. And I believed that. I really did. In the weeks that followed, things continued in that strange, muted way, life unfolding like a familiar song played in the wrong key. Alina wasn't hostile, not even cold. Just, elsewhere. There was a sense that she was always half a beat ahead of me, as if part of her mind was stuck in some far-off conversation I wasn't invited to. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings, but sometimes she missed my cheek and hit the air. She still responded to my texts, but often hours later, and always with a kind of bland efficiency. "Yes, okay, will do." I'd ask how her day was and get vague replies. "Busy, but good." "Exhausting." "Can we talk later?" I told myself not to take it personally. People get overwhelmed. She had taken on more clients than usual. One of her new projects was a large, high-profile space downtown, and I'd seen the way she lit up when describing it. I thought maybe she was just immersed in it, riding the wave of a creative high that required all her energy. Still, there were moments that stuck. She'd laugh at something on her phone, turn the screen away when I glanced over. I'd come into the room and she'd lock her phone before setting it down, never something she used to do. Once, I noticed she had started wearing lipstick again, a deep red shade she hadn't used in years. She caught me looking at her and said, "It's just for me. I miss feeling elegant." I nodded. She deserved to feel good about herself. If anything, I admired the way she was taking care of herself, eating cleaner, dressing sharper, moving through the world with more confidence. I didn't see it as a threat. I saw it as growth. We were still sleeping in the same bed, though intimacy had started to dissolve into something more logistical. She'd roll away after the lights went off, murmuring that she was too tired, or had an early morning. I didn't push. We'd been married long enough for dry spells not to seem unusual. That's how I justified it. I started staying later at work, more out of habit than necessity. There wasn't much waiting for me at home besides the vague tension of her silence. I missed the version of us that used to curl up on the couch and binge old crime dramas. Now she'd fall asleep with a book, or work on her laptop in bed while I scrolled my phone beside her. One night, I brought home takeout from her favorite Thai place. She opened the bag, pulled out the containers, then looked at me like she was trying to be polite. "Thanks," she said, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. We ate mostly in silence. I asked her about the project downtown, and she nodded without elaborating. She was there, physically, but emotionally adrift. I told myself it would pass. That everyone goes through periods of disconnect. That it was stress, or burnout, or just life being life. I didn't suspect anything deeper. I didn't want to. Because when you've built your life on trust, the idea of questioning it feels like pulling at a thread that might unravel everything. So I didn't pull. I told myself it was a phase. And I believed that, too. November came, cold and quiet. The days shortened, and so did our conversations. I'd watch Alina move around the house in the evenings, pouring wine, checking emails, slipping into silk robes she hadn't worn in years. There was a precision to her now, a controlled elegance, as though everything she did was for an audience I couldn't see. We still shared space, but not closeness. She'd curl up on the couch, legs tucked under her, responding to texts I never saw. If I asked who it was, she'd say, "Just work. Always work." Her voice had taken on a slightly defensive tone, like she was preparing for arguments I wasn't starting. The gym visits became more frequent. She started packing separate bags and showering there before coming home. Once, I noticed a faint cologne clinging to her coat. "Not mine?" I asked, casually. "New detergent at the gym?" She looked startled for half a second before smiling. "Must be. Or maybe I brushed up against someone on the subway." She said it so smoothly, I didn't push further. I remember one Sunday morning, she left early, said she was heading to the studio. I didn't think much of it. But when I opened the shared calendar we always used for client tracking and household plans, I saw no entry. Nothing scheduled. I stared at the empty slot for longer than I meant to. Then I closed it. I wasn't suspicious, not really. Not in the way people mean when they talk about infidelity. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt confused. Disconnected. Like I was missing some essential translation that would make her sudden distance make sense. Once, I tried to bring it up. We were sitting on the porch, both of us bundled against the wind. I said, "You've been quiet lately. Everything all right?" She glanced at me, then back at the horizon. "Just a lot on my mind," she said. "Nothing you need to worry about." That last part hit me harder than I expected. Nothing you need to worry about. It landed like a closed door. She had started disappearing into her thoughts more often. I'd catch her zoning out during meals or while brushing her hair, staring off like she was somewhere else entirely. Then, when she noticed me watching, she'd snap back and smile as if nothing had happened. The worst part was how normal it all looked from the outside. We still functioned. Bills were paid. Groceries got done. Friends still commented on how lucky we were, how together we seemed. No one would have guessed the air between us had turned so thin. One night, I came home a little early and heard her on the phone in the upstairs hallway. Her voice was low, softer than usual, almost playful. I couldn't make out the words. When I called out to let her know I was back, she ended the call quickly. "That was just a client," she said as I walked in. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes, surprise, maybe, or guilt. Or maybe I was imagining things. I didn't want to believe otherwise. I was tired of the silence, of guessing. I convinced myself that love meant patience. That she'd open up in time. But patience, I was beginning to understand, could also be a way of waiting in the dark. It happened on a Wednesday. I'd gotten home late from work, caught in traffic and drizzle, drained in that dull way that makes your skin feel too heavy. The house was quiet when I entered, but the lights were on. I dropped my bag by the door, loosened my tie, and made my way to the kitchen. She was there, glass of wine in hand, perched against the counter like she was waiting. She didn't look angry. She didn't look upset. She looked deliberate. "Hey," I said, cautious. "We need to talk," she replied, setting the glass down. Her tone wasn't accusatory. It was almost too calm. I leaned on the opposite counter, unsure whether to brace or relax. "Okay." She crossed her arms, exhaled slowly. "I can't do this anymore, not like this." "What's wrong?" She laughed. "It wasn't warm." "Wrong? Everything is wrong. I feel like I'm married to a ghost." I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You," she said, gesturing at me. "You're always the same. Predictable. Safe. Comfortable. You don't push, you don't challenge. You don't even make me feel wanted anymore." It took a second to register. "Where is this coming from?" She didn't pause. "From years of feeling like I've been standing next to someone who stopped trying." "You think doing the dishes and remembering my coffee order is enough? You think that's passion?" I stayed silent. Let her talk. Because something in her had clearly been boiling for longer than I realized. She looked at me like she pitied me. "My ex made me feel things you haven't in years. He listens. He sees me. He touches me like I'm electric. Not like I'm some antique vase you're afraid to break." It was the first time she said his name. A name I hadn't heard since before we were married. A name I didn't even know had come back into her orbit. "You've been seeing him." My voice didn't rise. I think it dropped, actually. Like the floor was shifting under me. She shrugged, unapologetic. "For a few months now. When I say I'm working late, it's him. We meet at his place. Or sometimes mine, when you're out." I said nothing. She wasn't done. "I'm not asking you to forgive it. I'm just telling you because I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of this house, of pretending you're enough for me." "Then why are you still here?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Because you pay for everything," she said bluntly. "Because I like this life. I'm not stupid, I don't want to give that up. But I want to feel alive, too. And you don't give me that." I stood there, stunned. She wasn't crying. She wasn't sorry. She was delivering facts like a business proposal. "I want to keep things as they are," she continued. "You take care of the finances, the house, whatever. But I get to be with him. Emotionally. Physically. I'm tired of being bored. I want more. And he gives me that." There was a silence so thick I thought the walls might collapse under it. "You're insane," I whispered. "No," she said, lifting her glass again. "I'm just done pretending you're enough." And that's when I felt it. Not heartbreak. Not yet. Just a rage beginning to stir. Slow. Boiling. Focused. I don't remember walking toward her. I don't remember choosing words. All I remember is the sensation, something rising in my chest, sharp and volcanic. Not sorrow. Not confusion. Rage. Pure and clean and white-hot. "So let me get this straight," I said, stepping closer. You want me to keep the bills paid, the fridge stocked, the roof over your head, while you sleep with your ex? She didn't flinch. She sipped her wine, like we were discussing a home renovation. It doesn't have to be complicated. Plenty of people have open marriages. Open? I snapped. You didn't ask. You decided. That's not open. That's betrayal with a price tag. Her expression flattened. You're overreacting. That did it. I felt my voice leave me like thunder. Overreacting? You're sitting in the house I built, wearing clothes I bought, drinking wine I paid for, and you have the audacity to tell me I'm overreacting because you're bored? She set the glass down carefully. Yelling doesn't change anything. No, I said, cold now. But it makes it clear where I stand. You can take that little idea of yours, your twisted plan to use me like some pathetic ATM while you spread your legs for someone who couldn't even keep you before, and offer it to someone else. See who's desperate enough to bite. Her jaw tightened. Don't speak to me like that. I'll speak to you like the fraud you are. I turned, walked to the foyer, pulled open the closet. Her coat. Her bag. Tossed them at her feet. She stood frozen. What are you doing? You're leaving, I said flatly. Now. I'm not going anywhere. You are. You've already left this marriage, remember? You said it yourself. This is just a formality. Her face shifted, shock, then something else. Fear. Pride cracking. She bent down slowly to pick up her bag. You can't just throw me out, she said, not meeting my eyes. I can. And I am. You want a free ride, go beg him for it. Let's see how long you last when you're not sleeping between Egyptian cotton sheets. This house. This life. It's done. You want freedom? You've got it. But it doesn't come with room service. You can't do this to me, she said, voice thin. I stepped closer again, quieter now. You chose this. You brought this into our home. And from the moment you crawled back into his bed, you stopped being my wife. What you are now is a squatter, and I want you out. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Also, I added, walking to the bookshelf and pulling out a folder I'd already started compiling in secret, you're paying compensation for every week you used this house like a brothel after you started cheating. My lawyer will contact you. Expect a bill. That got her. Her face broke, first in disbelief, then in fury. You're vindictive. No. I'm finished, I said. You turned love into a transaction. I'm just sending the invoice. I opened the door and stood aside. She stared at me for a moment, then stepped out. No drama. No final speech. Just footsteps fading down the porch stairs. And for the first time in months, the silence felt clean. After the door closed behind her, I stood still for a long time. The air in the house felt sterile. Like it had been scrubbed of something or someone. I expected to feel empty, or broken, but what came instead was a quiet, almost unsettling clarity. The kind that arrives not with tears, but with stillness. I wasn't mourning anymore. I wasn't begging for explanations. I wasn't even angry, not in the same way. I had burned through that. I walked into the kitchen, picked up her wine glass, still half full. It smelled like cherries and lies. I poured it into the sink and rinsed it out carefully. Not out of respect, out of finality. The bedroom was next. Our bedroom. I opened drawers she hadn't touched in weeks. Folded sweaters. The silk robe she'd worn the night she said he made her feel alive. I placed it in a bag, with precision, like I was handling contaminated fabric. Her scent lingered in the folds, perfume I hadn't bought her, softness I didn't recognize anymore. I took everything that was hers, jewelry, shoes, lotions, scarves. All of it. Packed it into boxes. Labeled them with cold accuracy. Then I stopped by the spare room, the one I'd barely entered in months. She'd used it sometimes, claimed she needed a quiet place to think. That was the room I started sleeping in after things got strange, though I hadn't admitted it out loud. It felt less like exile now, more like truth. At some point, I found myself sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. I wasn't numb. I was aware, acutely. Of the quiet hum of the refrigerator. Of the creak in the hallway floorboards. Of the fact that every sound in this house had changed. She was gone. But her echo wasn't. The next morning, I called the locksmith. Changed every lock. Called my lawyer. Sent over the timeline, the receipts, the messages I'd taken pictures of on the few occasions I'd glimpsed her phone open on the counter. It wasn't perfect evidence, but it was enough to begin a conversation about financial misuse and personal compensation. She wanted to live two lives. Now she'd be paying for both. Friends started to call. Some had heard already, bad news travels fast, even quieter than good news. I kept it brief. It's over. She made her choice. Most didn't push. The few who did got silence in return. I spent the weekend gutting the house. Not dramatically. Not with anger. Just deliberately. Her books, her paintings, her kitchen tools, boxed, sealed, and stacked in the garage. By Sunday night, I lit a fire in the hearth. The first one in months. It crackled to life, and I sat on the floor with a whiskey, watching the flames eat the logs slowly. For a moment, I let myself feel something close to grief, but it wasn't for her. It was for the version of me that still believed we were untouchable. I had protected our life with everything I had. And still, it had collapsed, not because of lack, but because she wanted more. And now? Now there was only space. And strangely, that felt like peace. The first morning without her was quiet in a way I didn't expect. I made coffee, not out of habit, but because I wanted it. Sat at the kitchen table. No second mug across from me. No soft footfalls upstairs. Just light through the window and the sound of the city waking up beyond the glass. I didn't feel triumphant. This wasn't a victory. But it wasn't a loss either. It was the inevitable conclusion to a story that had long stopped making sense, no matter how tightly I tried to hold its pages together. I went for a walk that afternoon. Past the bookstore where we met. The bench where we used to sit, her legs pulled up, her eyes squinting in the sun. I stopped and looked at it, not with sadness, but with a kind of distant fondness. Like remembering a dream you no longer belong to. When I got back home, I deleted our shared calendar. Shut down the grocery list app we used. Removed her emergency contact from the system at work. I also removed her from my will. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2. She tried to reach out once, an email with no subject line. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Some things don't require answers. Some people don't get final words. I started sleeping better. Waking lighter. Eating without a lump in my throat. Grief didn't come in waves like they say. It came in whispers. Fleeting. Forgettable. And eventually, it stopped coming at all. I never planned for the life that followed her. But it came anyway. One steady step at a time. I'm not who I was when she left. And I'm not who I was when she stayed. I'm something else now. Something stronger. And for the first time in a long, long while, I'm mine.